Jordan Peterson's new book came out this week. But if you remember, there were a lot of issues a while back with employees at Penguin Random House calling for the publisher to drop Jordan, assumingly because their views didn't align with his. How dangerous do you think that is? And can you see a scenario in which something like this happens again and has results? Because I think that would be a very, very bad thing to happen.
Well, let's not kind of undersell the case here, right? Because there's a tendency to caricature or euphemize the argument from both sides here, right? So when you say something like people are trying to cancel people they disagree with, that's not how they see it, right? Like they're not saying I disagree with this person, so they shouldn't be published. Clearly, they're saying more than that, right? They're saying that what this person is saying is dangerous or harmful. Jordan Peterson receives accusations of transphobia and sexism and all of these kinds of things, and they say these are horrible, dangerous things, and our publishing house shouldn't be promoting them. Now, like Penguin Random House can publish whoever the hell they want. Like honestly, like it's a similar issue to like the platforming thing. People seem to think that if somewhere refuses to platform someone, they're kind of infringing on free speech. It's not how it works, right? My position is this, though. If Jordan Peterson has already been offered the book deal, right, and then people come along and say, hey, like, I want you to kind of not allow this to go forward, this is where the problem raises, right? Because Penguin can publish whoever they want, right? They don't have to publish anyone. They can publish whoever they choose. But once they've kind of given that offer, once it's already in motion, if that then is kind of stopped because of some kind of like moral protest or something, that's when I think a problem is raised. Now, Penguin is in their legal right to stop production immediately if they want to, but morally speaking, I think that would be a horrible decision. And it's different from the moral decision not to publish him in the first place. If they looked at his work, said, this is controversial stuff, we don't really agree with what this guy's saying, we don't really want to put our name to it, we don't want to publish it, fine, whatever. But if they've already said, yeah, no, we're fine with this, and then someone crops up and says, hey, I'm not really comfortable with this, and then they start kind of crapping themselves and think, oh no, we need to pull this off the shelves or something, then it just shows that kind of, Penguin Random House is kind of being gripped by the throat by quite a loud minority, because it's very clearly a minority of people who literally think the book shouldn't be published, right? I don't think it would be too problematic in practice, because if Penguin Random House had put the book out of publication, you think Jordan Peterson couldn't have found a different publisher? I'm sure he'd have managed it. The problem is when this starts happening, when this starts kind of trickling down, as it were. There was an author that cropped up in my Twitter feed for some reason the other day, because he posted about, I think like Ben Shapiro retweeted him or something, because he'd written a book about, I think it was something surrounding like transgender issues or something from a right-wing perspective. And I have no interest in reading this book. For all I can tell, it might have been some kind of weird crackpot conspiracy theory. But the guy said, Amazon just removed my book from Audible and from the main store. You now can't buy it. And I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. So I looked up the book and I found it on Blackwell's, and I couldn't seem to order it from Blackwell's. I thought, that's weird. And I found it on Waterstones, and there I could finally order it, right? There I was like, okay, so you can buy it somewhere. And I was like, I'm going to buy it, right? And I bought the book because I thought to myself, like, nobody really knows who this author is. He's not like a famous author, right? If he gets completely dropped and banned by Amazon, he's not going to be able to make enough noise to kind of make sure that book still gets published. He will have just legitimately been kind of unpublished by a platform because they don't like what he had to say. It made me kind of want to buy the book. I'm probably not going to read the book, but I was like, I want to have this restricted material. If someone tells me I'm not allowed to read something, it makes me want to at least own that book, right? It's like, yeah, Jordan Peterson would have been fine, but that guy probably wouldn't be. And so when people like to say things like, oh, calm down, like this isn't a big deal, it's Jordan Peterson, he's this big dude, he's going to get published, whatever. It's like, you're missing the point, right? This is indicative of a kind of a mode of operation within publishing houses, that so long as someone is sufficiently upset by something, it can be taken out of publication. Of course, there are legitimate reasons to take things out of publication, but I don't think that someone like Jordan Peterson fulfills those criteria. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I did a similar thing a while ago with maybe she's not a unknown author, but when JK Rowling brought out her latest book, and everyone was trying to cancel that before, you know, it even come out. People had, no one had read the book, but everyone had an opinion on it. That was a complete work of fiction, and no one had even had read it. They just read. I remember there was an interview on Good Morning Britain with Piers Morgan, and the main, you know, the main head of, you know, the cancel brigade behind it was arguing, and Piers said to him, "Have you read the book?" And he said, "Well, no, but I've read an extensive review." And I thought that says everything right there, man.
It does. I saw that clip. And yeah, that's kind of the problem here. And it also raises this question of like, what are we talking about here? Because people think that JK Rowling should be cancelled, right? But what does that mean? Like, I'm sure that not everybody thinks that. I think some people just think something like what she said on Twitter was transphobic and it should be taken off Twitter. Some people might go further and say, oh, I don't want to support her work, so I'm not going to buy her books anymore. That's fine. You know, do what you want. Like, if you want to kind of deprive yourself of Harry Potter because you don't like what the author said unrelatedly elsewhere, like, that's your prerogative. Do as you please. But if you say something like these books should be taken out of publication, then you're in trouble. But I don't think anyone was saying that. Like, I certainly didn't see anyone seriously suggesting that, you know, Harry Potter should no longer be published or something, right? So I don't think that it's like one of the more serious cases of cancel culture. But there was still definitely this kind of overwhelming feeling that JK Rowling is now a bad guy, right? Is now kind of a bad person, is now this meme of a bad person, shouldn't support their work. Obviously, you have a legal right to. We're not saying they should be kind of taken off the shelves, but morally speaking, you shouldn't be buying this book. Then again, we're into the question of a kind of moral, social punishment, form of punishment, which might be legitimate. Maybe what she said was insensitive and rude and wrong, and she should suffer some kind of consequence for it. But how far are we going to let that go? And you've got to be very specific about your complaint, because if your complaint is JK Rowling said something transphobic on Twitter, so I don't want to support her by buying her new book, fine. If your complaint is, well, JK Rowling said something transphobic on Twitter, and I think that her new book is also transphobic, that's a different claim, right? Then you have to prove both of those things are true, right? Like, you are perfectly within your rights to say, well, I haven't read this book. I don't know what this book is about. I'm not going to read it because I don't want to, because I don't want to support this woman who elsewhere has said something I find intolerable. That's fine. You can do that. But don't say the book's transphobic if you haven't read it. That would be the same thing as saying that the tweet is transphobic if you haven't actually read the tweet, which is something that a lot of people did as well. There's no problem with having an opinion on these things. And in fact, kind of, as you say, as you would use your purchasing power to try and move things in one direction by buying the book, other people use their purchasing power to move it in the other direction by not buying the book. That's great. Welcome to the free market. But morally speaking, you got to make sure that you actually know what you're talking about. If you're going to make a claim, and especially the kind of claim that will tarnish someone's reputation for the rest of their lives, you better make sure it's accurate. And it may well be accurate, as you say, like it may well be that this book is transphobic. I have no idea. I haven't read it, but I'm not going to claim that it is until I've read it. I'm also not going to claim that it's not until I've read it. I've got nothing to say about that book because I haven't read it, and that's the way it will remain.